Update your Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter status using the hashtags #NULCONF22. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the 2022 National Urban League NU Conference Opening Presidential Plenary, State of the Urban League Address. Please welcome to the stage Rhonda Spears-Bell, Senior Vice President and Chief Marketing Officer of the National Urban League and Executive Producer of the National Urban League Conference.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Woo, you all look great in here. Better than good. Welcome to the National Urban League's opening presidential plenary. Y'all, we are live and in person. And I'm so happy to see everyone this morning, especially those who are physically here in this ballroom right now. We absolutely value our online attendees too, those of you who are watching our virtual conference. You all have stuck with us through virtual events and Zoom meetings since 2020, but the vibration and energy in this room right now is super high. I said it's high. And this is what showing up and showing out looks like. The power of human connection cannot be denied and should never be taken for granted. So I sincerely thank you for your presence, your unwavering support for the National Urban League. And I think we all deserve a round of applause and to give thanks. Because you know what? Millions didn't make it. Millions didn't make it. Millions didn't make it. But we are the ones who did. And we should be thankful for that. Can I get an amen? After maneuvering through the pandemic the last 2 years and being in an all-virtual conference last year, we are excited that we are back, bringing you the best of both experiences, returning to both an in-person conference and a virtual conference. The National Urban League Conference is indeed the hottest conference of the summer. And here's why. You can experience in our virtual conference, we have our virtual career professional development fair, Small Business Matters Entrepreneurship Summit, Tech Connect, and the Urban League Experience and Virtual Expo, all virtual, not in person here. Yes, there's amazing content, exhibitors, activations, and entertainment. And then, of course, there's the Urban League Live virtual party. It's actually our in-person party, but it's hybrid this year. So you can experience, if you're not able to be with us in person, you'll be able to experience it virtually. But those of you who are here, y'all get ready. Put your clothes on and let's party tonight. As Mr. Moriel says, it is a purpose with the party. That's tonight. But within our virtual experience at Expo, we have over so many booths, our health and wellness space, so many things that are taking place, our tech space, Tech Connect, Small Business Matters, so many exciting content activations, our corporate partners, King's Corner, Her Space, the Marketplace, and don't forget that we have a Black Brilliance Marketplace featuring Black-owned brands showcasing a broad and diverse range of products and services. Yes, at the National Urban League Conference, you can shop Black while you're here in person and online. Now, before we get to the program, I'd like to make note of the changes and updates for our Friday morning schedule to accommodate the Vice President's appearance at the National Urban League Conference. We are excited that Vice President Harris will join us tomorrow for our Legacy Leadership Luncheon. But with that, there are changes that we need to address, and we need to make sure that you are aware so that we can all be in place. Beginning at 8 a.m., this is a time change for our plenary session. The morning plenary tomorrow is 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Everyone will be required to go through magnetometers and be screened by Secret Service beginning at 6 a.m. Friday morning to attend the plenary. Everyone will be required to leave the third floor. If you're with us in person, you are currently on the third floor. So you will be required to leave the premises and the third floor immediately following the plenary. Please note, our forums and workshops, the time has changed, 10:15 to 11:15 a.m. 10:15 to 11:15 for all the morning plenaries. At 11 a.m., magnetometers will reopen for the Legacy Leadership Luncheon. Please note that only luncheon ticket holders will be allowed on the third floor. Luncheon tickets will be checked on the second floor at the escalators of the convention center. And at 11:30, doors will open for the Legacy Leadership Luncheon, where we are officially celebrating the 80th anniversary of the National Council of Urban League Guilds. And of course, at 12:30, the program begins. So I know it's a lot of information. Bottom line, you have to go through MAGS tomorrow morning, even though the Vice President is coming for the luncheon. You have to do it twice. I now have the honor of introducing our presider for this year's State of the Urban League Presidential Plenary, and a true honor it is. Please welcome our Chairman of the National Urban League Board and Chief Administrator at MasterCard, Chief Administrative Officer, at MasterCard. Let's welcome Timothy Murphy.
Well, good morning, everyone. Good morning and welcome to the 2022 National Urban League's Presidential Plenary and State of the Urban League Address. It's not just a pleasure to welcome you all this morning, it is a pleasure to see you. 2019 was the last time we were able to physically attend large events, or frankly, any event. And we stayed at home for almost 2 years, finding alternative ways to stay in touch, to work, to learn, and to even teach our own kids. And I'll tell you, if you're like my family, we have had much deeper respect for teachers after COVID homeschooling, right, than we did before. We can make light of that time now that we're back to some version of normal, but the experience changed us, and hopefully in some positive ways. I think it's safe to believe that most of us reflect on that period with gratitude for those who are still with us, and melancholy and a sense of loss for those who aren't. But that's what makes this morning program of even greater significance. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask that we give ourselves a moment of silence to pay homage to the many who didn't make it through the pandemic, and then to drink in the privilege we've regained that allows us to gather here today. Thank you. In the spirit of gratitude, I'd like to acknowledge our benevolent title sponsors for this year's conference, Bank of America, Nationwide, and Toyota, and also our sponsors for today's event, Bank of America and Target. At a time when we hear ominous predictions of recession almost daily, and we're all expected to do more with less, I couldn't be more proud of the sponsors who keep committing their support to the work of the National Urban League, many who have done so year after year. We know it's not just a nice thing to do, but they understand the breadth and value this organization brings to causes like social and economic justice, health and education, just to name a few. They see the National Urban League is putting work in that bears fruit and has not wavered since our inception. So please join me in saluting the sponsors, partners, and champions of the National Urban League for remaining committed to our mission and to our vision. So thank you. So now we turn our attention to why we're here, to discuss the state of the Urban League, which really is the state of the nation and the world at large. During this morning's plenary, we have the honor of hearing from several speakers who will share insights on where we're headed, as well as the impediments affecting progress and what we, meaning all of us, can do to make a difference. Now, one thing we can definitely do is to vote at the local, regional, and national level in every state, whether red or blue. And this year's midterm congressional elections, thank you. This year's midterm congressional elections have real consequences, both good and bad. So don't leave it up to others to make decisions that will affect you and your family. Voting is a hard-fought right that we still have for now, and so please exercise it. Delivering our keynote address, where you hear more about what you can do to keep our nation's democracy intact, is our leader himself, our auspicious leader himself, President and CEO Mark Morial. I am definitely looking forward to that. Mark will be out here in just a moment. So there's a lot of work to do this morning. So let's set the mood and take a short pause to enjoy a musical performance by David K. North, who will lead us in the Black National Anthem, and if Congressman Clyburn has his way, the national hymn, Lift Every Voice and Sing.
Now everybody knows the words, but they're going to be on the teleprompters, but I'm going to be looking for everybody to be singing, or I'm going to toss the mic right at you. Here we go, let's do this. Stand as you are able, please. Yeah, I'm talking to y'all over here too. Here we go. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring, ring with the harmonies of liberty. Let our rejoicing rise high as the listening skies. Let it resound loud as the rolling seas. Sing a song full of the faith that the dark past has taught us. Sing a song full of the hope that the present has brought us. Facing the rising sun of our new day begun. Let us march on till victory is won. Stony the road we trod, bitter the chasing rod, felt in the days when hope unborn had died, yet with the steady beat of not our weary feet, come to the place for which our parents sighed. Parents, yeah, come on. We have come over a way that with tears has been watered. We have come treading a path through the blood of the slaughtered. Out from the gloomy past till now we stand at last, where the white gleam of our bright star is cast. God of our wearies, God of our silent tears, thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, thou who hast by thy might led us into the light. Keep us forever in the path we pray. Lest our hearts think from the places of God where we're meant. Lest our hearts shadowed beneath thy hand. May we forever, forever stand true to our God, true to our native land. Thank you.
Thank you, David, for sharing your gift of song with us. Music is a great unifier, don't you agree? So let's show our appreciation by giving David another round of applause. And if you think David is talented, just wait to see who else is on the agenda. This year's program is filled with dynamic speakers at our daily plenary and forum sessions who will bring fresh perspectives to the issues impacting our communities across the nation. We will recognize several extraordinary women in leadership at the Women in Power Luncheon. And of course, no National Urban League conference experience would be complete without the Whitney M. Young Jr. Gala Awards, our signature soiree that will feature Black Alley, Manny Fresh, and Doug E. Fresh on Friday evening. We also encourage you to take advantage of the Urban League Now experience and lounge at the Convention Center, which is open from 10:30 a.m. to 8 p.m. Urban League Now has it all, from coffee and co-work spaces to product giveaways and free headshots. It is the place for you to take a breather between sessions. You'll also enjoy celebrity meet and greets, health and wellness pop-ups, pitch competition, makeup tutorials. You just have to stop by to experience it all. And tonight, we hope you'll join us for Urban League Live, So Fresh Edition Party being hosted by Hilton, State Farm, Molson Coors, and Volkswagen. Now, putting a full conference together in person after a 3-year hiatus is no easy feat, neither for the National Urban League team or for the host city. But we are fortunate to have the support of local Urban League leaders who work in tandem with us every step of the way. So I'd like to invite President and CEO of the Greater Washington Urban League, George Lambert, to the podium to share a few words. George.
Good morning, Urban Leaguers. Old school notes. So, on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Greater Washington Urban League, on behalf of our staff, on behalf of our Thursday Network, which is our young professionals, and our Guild, and all of the volunteers who are helping you to navigate this week through the Convention Center and through the hotel, welcome to Washington, D.C. And thank you. And I might also add, welcome to my city of birth as well. I do want to start by saying that I hope all of you had an opportunity to join us last night for the opening night reception. It was wonderful, y'all. We had a great time. So hope you were there. And do want to do another shout out to our sponsors. Thank you so much for underwriting that event for us. It was wonderful. We appreciate your support and your ongoing sponsorship. Now, just one thing I want to leave with you this morning, a thought. Don't want you to miss it. Our time on this earth is glorious but brief. But our mark echoes through the ages. I'm going to say that again. Our time on this earth is glorious but brief, but our mark echoes through the ages. National Urban League, 1910. Greater Washington Urban League, 1938. Okay? My job, your job, our job is to ensure in no uncertain terms that the Urban League's mark will echo through the ages. Let's get down to business. Thank you.
Let's give George another warm round of applause, shall we? Thank you. And And now it's my pleasure to introduce our sponsors for this morning's State of the Urban League address, Steve Boland, who is the Chief Administrative Officer at Bank of America, and Laisha Ward, who's the Executive Vice President and Chief External Engagement Officer on behalf of Target Corporation. Steve will come to the podium to share remarks, immediately followed by Laisha Ward. Steve, over to you, sir.
Well, thanks. It's really a pleasure to be here with all of you today as we kick off this year's conference. And I know it's going to be inspiring and insightful. You know, I was thinking about today and realizing the last time was in Indianapolis prior to the pandemic. And you know what? I feel the same energy in this room today as I felt just a few years ago. It's an honor to share the stage with so many distinguished business, government, and social advocacy leaders. We come together united in our mission to exchange ideas and insights that can transform our communities and can transform lives. I have the privilege of serving as a member of the Board of Trustees of the Urban League, and I want to just take a moment and personally recognize my friend Mark Morial for his continued leadership and his tireless efforts for what the National Urban League stands. Can we give him another round of applause? You know, we benefit at Bank of America because Mark also serves on our National Community Advisory Council. And I have to tell you, in that role, he's been more than a partner to the bank. He's been a guiding voice. He's been a sounding board. He shares our commitment to driving impactful change in the communities that we serve. At Bank of America, you often hear us use the term responsible growth. It guides everything that we do, but it's much more than a business proposition. It's about delivering for our clients and our shareholders, but it's also about how do we address some of society's greatest challenges. We do this by aligning our financing, our philanthropy, and our business activities to help achieve meaningful change in the communities that we serve. We've had a long-standing focus and efforts to advance racial equality and economic opportunity, which is truly one of the nation's most enduring challenges. We know that we can help open the door to opportunity when we help break down barriers to issues like homeownership and access to startup capital for our stalled businesses. So to address this, we've done a few things. We have a Bank of America community homeownership commitment. That's $15 billion we've committed by 2025. Our goal, we want to help create 60,000 new homeowners from low and moderate income communities. We've also committed $60 million to increasing access to capital and career opportunities for Black and people of color affordable housing developers. We've committed $40 million to over 20 MDIs, minority deposit institutions, and CDFIs. And we committed $25 million to 21 historically Black colleges and universities. We've invested $350 million in minority and women-led companies through capital investment by mission-focused venture funds, and recently, we've taken steps to start to address health equity. We committed $40 million in low-cost capital. It's going to help to fund the creation and expansion of community health centers. And in addition, we've joined with major health organizations to launch a first-of-its-kind $25 million collaboration to help improve health outcomes in communities of color. Now, despite all of these things, the reality is there is so much more to be done, and we're at the beginning of this journey. I'll commit to you that at Bank of America, we'll continue to leverage our scale, our financial capabilities, and our talent to ensure we deliver value for our key stakeholders and provide the resources and tools to help our communities prosper and thrive. Thank you all.
Thank you, and good morning. On behalf of the Target team, or Target, as I know many of you like to refer to us, I want to thank Mark Morial, the Urban League Board of Directors, and all of the affiliates for bringing the Urban League mission to life. I'm proud to work for a company like the Urban League who believes in the power of family. You know, at Target, our purpose is to help all families discover the joy of everyday life. And that includes joy for Black families. Our purpose, our culture, and our values are at the center of every decision that we make, including our commitment to social justice and racial equity. Target's been on a journey to build and refine our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy. And while we've made progress, there's room to do more, especially for our Black team members, the Black guests, and our Black communities. That's why we created our Racial Equity Action and Change Committee, or REACH, which is a company-wide effort to address racism and inequities that disproportionately impact the Black community. Our goal is to also accelerate impact and fuel the economic, social, and structural vitality of the Black community across this country. For us, this isn't about making statements. It's about listening, learning, and co-creating solutions with partners like you, doing the work, including our recent commitment to spend $2 billion with Black-owned businesses by 2025 to create economic opportunity. Thank you. That $2 billion will help us create economic opportunity, build intergenerational wealth and jobs that will change the trajectory of Black people's lives. We don't have all the answers. We know that we are not alone on this journey. We can do this work when we're able to do this work with all of you, my Urban League family. So I'm here humbly to say thank you for your leadership, for your courage, and for your commitment. You don't do it for the recognition or the accolades. You're doing it to make our people better. And for that, I'm grateful. I see you, I respect you, and I'm truly inspired by you. Thank you, and God bless.
So thank you, Bank of America and Target, for your support of the National Urban League. Your consistent generosity allows us to continue to do the work of the Urban League and what we were created to do. On a final note, I just want to say we're excited to hear from the Vice President at the Legacy Leadership Award luncheon tomorrow afternoon. Please be sure to check the National Urban League website for updates on start times at all our Friday session events. This is for tomorrow. The first plenary, The State of Black America, Combating the Threat to Civil Rights and Democracy, will start, as you heard Rhonda say, at 8 a.m. tomorrow, not at 8:30, but come earlier to get through the Secret Service and the security. So do check the League's websites for updates on tomorrow's session. So our next speaker, I'm incredibly excited to introduce to you. She is Brianna Woods, a brave 17-year-old high school student who testified in front of the Kentucky legislature last February in opposition to a bill that seeks to limit classroom discussions about systemic racism and to curb anti-racist initiatives. Affectionately called Bree by her friends, she is a rising high school senior. She is a member of the National Urban League Youth Council and the co-editor-in-chief of her school's yearbook, which I was in high school too, so that's cool. This aspiring champion of social justice is also a normal teenager with hobbies like sewing and graphic design. After high school, she plans to pursue a degree in secondary education. I guess she wants to ensure history is taught as necessary. To educate and not to placate. Let's welcome Bree Woods.
Good morning. My name is Bree Woods, and thank you. And I represent the Louisville affiliate on the National Urban League Youth Council. Today, I have the honor of introducing someone who is simply luminary. Whether it's serving as the mayor of New Orleans or advocating for Black America during the pandemic, he brings and leaves light and inspiration wherever he goes. I can say from personal experience that I've seen his spirit, charm, and leadership illuminate everyone in a room. He has touched the lives of many people in his pursuit for unity and the upliftment of African Americans, for example, by bringing the Essence Festival to his hometown, New Orleans. Let's see what light and inspiration he brings and leaves for us today. Please join me in welcoming President and CEO of the National Urban League, Mark H. Morial.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you for that warm and generous introduction. Good morning, Urban Leaguers. Welcome to the District of Columbia, called by some the District of Confusion, by others the District of Chaos. But for us, we will not rest until we can call it America's 51st state. Now, after a 3-year hiatus, I'm so glad to see y'all. I'm proud to say that by the powers vested in me, the 2022 National Urban League Conference is officially in session. And it is with pride, concern, and hope that I welcome you after what has been the most eventful and life-altering 3 years that most of us, our families, our communities, and the nation have experienced. When we met for our last in-person conference in Indianapolis in 2019, under the leadership of Tony Mason, then Special Counsel Robert Mueller was sitting down to testify to the House Judiciary and Intelligence Committees about his investigation into Russian interference in the 2016 election. We had just published our 2019 State of Black America report, which plainly and clearly documented Russia's sinister and diabolical efforts to sabotage and suppress, yes, African American votes, and that campaign was targeted at young black voters. We documented this and promoted a cynical message that they should boycott the 2016 presidential election. The then president was engaged in a racist campaign of slander against 4 congresswomen of color, spreading lies about immigrants and voter fraud after he had proclaimed that the Charlottesville massacre was perpetrated by good people on both sides. In 2019, when we met, the first cases of the deadliest pandemic in American history, COVID-19, were months in the future. Today, we look back. We look back on more deaths than World War I, World War II, Pearl Harbor, Hurricane Katrina, the Iraq War, Superstorm Sandy, and 9/11 combined. To some, they are numbers. To us, they are our neighbors, our mothers, our fathers, our sons, our daughters, and our granddaughters who lost their lives due to COVID-19. To anyone here who may have lost a family member or a friend, we offer our continuing prayers. When we met in Indianapolis in 2019, the nation had not yet heard the names of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, Daunte Wright, or Atatiana Jefferson. When we met in Indianapolis in 2019, a black woman serving on the Supreme Court, a black woman vice president, a black woman serving on the Federal Reserve. When we met in 2019, they were dreams in the eyes of our mothers. Now in 2022, it is a reality. As we look back, police have killed more than 400 unarmed black men and women since 2013. As we look back, hate crimes against all communities, not just the black community, have spiked. And gun violence is ripping and tearing apart our neighborhoods, our cities, our lives and our community. As we look back, a fascist attempted coup to overthrow the United States government through violence, as we saw on January 6th. Back in 2019, it was an unimaginable prospect. On the second day of that Indianapolis conference, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell twice blocked legislation to improve election security. Since then, he's been the prime architect and strategist behind the repeated use of the filibuster to defeat voting rights legislation. This is a dramatic turn for a man who voted for the 2005 reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act. The Urban League movement no longer recognizes this man. When we met in Indianapolis in 2019, we were alarmed that Black Americans and others were being deterred and denied participation in elections by the Supreme Court's decision in Shelby, which opened the floodgates to state voter suppression laws by the dozens and eventually by the hundreds. Now we are alarmed that there will no longer be elections in which to participate, or at least that officials who oversee elections will have free rein to disregard any election results they don't like. Make no mistake, urban leaguers, it's not a fantasy, it's not a movie, it's not a story, it's not an exaggeration. Your democracy, my democracy, our democracy is under assault and it's under attack. And as an urban league movement, we will resist any effort to undermine the democracy that our ancestors and forefathers and foremothers fought to improve, expand, and create for all of us. As a nation and as a movement, we've only just begun to navigate the aftershocks of the last 3 years. And we've gathered here to reflect and refine our role in responding to the medical and economic crises wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic, but also to respond to the rise of extremism and hate and an unprecedented assault on democracy, civil liberties, and civil rights. Before we move on, I want to take a moment to reflect on the loss of Vernon Jordan, Michael Nightoff, John Hofmeister, and John Lewis. Vernon Jordan, who died in March of last year, was a transformational leader who brought this urban league movement into a new era. He assumed, we must remember, the leadership of the National Urban League at a crucial moment in history after the passage of the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, and the Fair Housing Act. The broad legal goals of the 20th century civil rights movement had been achieved. His mission, as he saw it, was to empower Black Americans to realize the promise of those victories, and in his words, Black people today can check into any hotel in America, but most do not have the wherewithal to check out. He was born into an era when Black men were routinely addressed as boy in his native Georgia, and his mother pointedly nicknamed him man. He honored her faith in him with his bravery, his grace, his brilliance, and his excellence. He was a personal mentor and dear friend, and his passing leaves a tremendous void that can never be filled. We applaud Vernon Jordan so he can hear us in the heavens. Vernon, can you hear us in the heavens? And John Hofmeister, who died suddenly last year, was a coach and mentor to me and many Urban League staff and affiliate leaders. He was and is one of the longest serving chairs of the board in the history of the Urban League movement. And Michael Nightoff, who died this past April, was a driving force behind the National Urban League Empowerment Center, our new headquarters, civil rights Museum retail and housing complex, which will open in Harlem in 2025. And John Lewis, who died in July of 2020. Was one of the greatest Americans of this generation. He walked as a young man side by side with civil rights legend, stood toe-to-toe with presidents, got beaten on that bridge in Selma. He always served as a moral voice and a moral compass pointing towards justice. He charged us to make good trouble, and we are here today to make good trouble. So we mourn the loss of Vernon and John and Michael and John Lewis, but we celebrate their lives. Tomorrow, we'll further recognize Vernon at the Whitney M. Young Gala, when his family will be present. Let me also acknowledge our host, George Lambert, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Greater Metropolitan Washington Urban League. Please stand, George. Please stand. We appreciate your leadership and your lifetime of service to the Urban League movement. George has been both at this affiliate and led our affiliates in Northern Virginia and Lorain County. And thank you to you, your staff, your board, and your volunteers. Another time for George Lambert and the Greater Metropolitan Washington Urban League. Let me say thank you to the hardworking staff of the National Urban League. Haven't they done a spectacular job with this conference? Incredible. But each and every single day, particularly through this pandemic, they have responded. They have adjusted. They have met the moment every day, every week, all year round during this very difficult 3 years. And let me acknowledge the chair of our board, Tim Murphy, again, the Chief Administrative Officer for MasterCard. Chairman Murphy, please stand. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you for your energy. Tim took over in November of 2019, which means this is his first in-person conference since he took the helm, and he's brought energy, vitality, and a positive approach to our board deliberations. Tim Murphy, again, the chair of our board. And let me also join in acknowledging all members of the National Urban League Board of Trustees who are with us today. If you all would stand, we appreciate, we acknowledge you as our volunteers, hardworking, deliberate, and passionate. Thank you very much. And happy birthday to the Urban League Guild, 80 years young. 80 years young, stand-up Guilders. The Guilders spent thousands of hours. Stand up, Urban League Guilders, wherever you are in this audience. 80 years of hours as tutors and mentors and fundraisers and goodwill ambassadors. We could not do the work we do without their efforts. Another time for the National Council of Urban League Guilds and our guild volunteers from all across the nation. And our young professionals, they're picking up the torch. They're picking up the torch. And they're giving new energy and life. Our young professionals, now as a National Urban League Volunteer Auxiliary, almost 25 years old. I hereby declare I am forever a young professional. Let's give it up for the young professionals. If you all would stand, we appreciate you. And thank you for your leadership and service. And then, ladies and gentlemen, the pride of our hearts, the joy of our lives, our Youth Summit participants, if they would stand. They are gathered at the University of Maryland. We have young people. You all keep standing for me, please. Young people, I had a chance to spend some time with them 2 days ago. And what I learned is that they are prepared and they are ready. They are smart and they are savvy. They are determined and they are prepared. They need our encouragement. They need our push. They need our investment. They need our mentorship, tutorship, and our protection. Sometimes we need to give them their ear because we can also learn from listening to them. So I want to ask everyone if the Youth Summit participants would continue to stand. I think it is so appropriate that each of us stand and give this next generation of leadership a strong shout, a strong applause, an appreciation. And certainly, at the local level, 2,500 affiliate staffers from coast to coast, working under the leadership of our CEOs, volunteer board members who join with Guilders and young professionals to support the Urban League movement. So to the affiliate movement, if you're an affiliate staffer, if you're an affiliate board member, please stand. We want to recognize and acknowledge your volunteer service right now, today. So since we met in Indianapolis, time and time again during this pandemic, I witnessed, we watched Urban League affiliate leaders demonstrate that they can be nimble and effective administrators and provide effective and impactful programs even while the pandemic was taking place, while at the same time serving as unapologetic advocates for justice and accountability. So I want to let all of our affiliate CEOs know that we as a movement and we as a nation understand that you are in the trench, you are on the ground, you are in the neighborhood, you are in the community. Your phone is ringing at 2 p.m. and 2 a.m. And you're healing and you're building and you're fighting and you're working. So affiliate CEOs, stand and get your shine, get your applause. We appreciate your leadership. We know that you're the heart and soul. And you and we were among the first to sound the alarm about the disparate impact of the COVID virus. At the beginning, there was little information except we knew people were dying and emergency rooms were crowded, but we didn't know a lot about who. We sounded the alarm, and it was clear that there was a disparity in the severity of the disease, in the number of hospitalizations, and yes, in the number of deaths. We fought for a response in the Congress to push the Congress and the then president to address racial equity in their response. When the economy collapsed and joblessness spiked to 15%, Urban League affiliates sprang into action as emergency resource centers distributing food, water, and personal protective equipment. There where people connected with jobs, with help paying their bills and keeping a roof over their heads. They were where school children who lacked broadband internet access at home came to do their homework. Let the record reflect, let history record that when others closed their doors, when others struggled to adjust, the agility and nimbleness and ability and creativity and legacy and history of Urban League leadership at the local level responded to this crisis and lifted up the communities and made a difference. Even before the first COVID vaccines were approved, we at the National Urban League partnered with coalitions of Black medical professionals to ensure, to demand, to encourage that vaccines would be safe and equitably distributed. And when the vaccine rollout threatened to leave Black communities behind, we sounded the alarm. And we enlisted our affiliate leaders to dispel myths about vaccines and to secure access to vaccines and treatment for every American. When Minneapolis police killed George Floyd, drawing renewed attention to other wrongful killings by police, we took the lead in holding police accountable, developing a plan, 21 pillars, a comprehensive framework for refining public safety, and joining the front lines as peaceful protesters in the Black Lives Matter movement. Whether it was Ahmaud Arbery in Atlanta, George Floyd in Minneapolis, Breonna Taylor in Louisville, Jacob Blake in Kenosha, or countless other examples, we saw Urban League CEOs step to the forefront and demand justice and accountability. In Kansas City, Louisiana, and Akron, Urban League leaders have demanded pattern or practice investigations by the Department of Justice into their local police departments. In the 2020 election, when COVID threatened access to the ballot box, we fought for and achieved vote by mail, no excuse absentee voting, expanded early voting, and drop box options in many states. Through our Reclaim Your Vote initiative, we made effective use of social media, phone banking, free rides to the polls to help achieve the highest turnout in modern American history. We envisioned several years ago an infrastructure plan which was different and progressive. We bundled it together in what we call the Main Street Marshall Plan, with a focus on combating poverty, promoting equity, and eliminating disparity. And when President Biden signed the Bipartisan Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act into law, it was as though the National Urban League Plan was Xerox, duplicated, scanned, transcribed, and replicated. And we respect it because imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. When federal aid for shuttered businesses failed to reach the Black communities that needed it the most, we worked with Congress on a plan to address that inequity and modify the PPP plan to target Black-owned businesses. We sat at the table with Majority Leader Schumer, Speaker Pelosi, Majority Whip Clyburn, CBC leaders like Karen Bass and Joyce Beatty. This is why there was a moratorium on evictions. This is why there was a child tax credit provision. This is why relief checks went to every American family. This is why unemployment insurance was enhanced. This is why there were rent subsidies, aid to cities, school districts, and transit authorities. And when we say the Urban League fights for you, we have an outside game and an inside game. And if you think our outside game is effective, our inside game gets results. We run an inside game and an outside game. And through it all, we never stop providing services and programs to our communities. We have some special guests here today. Aaliyah Muhammad, a resident of the District of Columbia and the mother of twin girls here in Washington. She thought the dream of owning a home had slipped through her grasp. But then she visited George Lambert and the Greater Washington Urban League's housing counseling staff. They helped her find a lender, connected her with a realtor, verified her income, and that dream is now a reality. Aaliyah is a homeowner with her daughters, and she is here with us today. If she would stand, Aaliyah, Muhammad, George Lambert, and his staff keep standing. Aaliyah, she is a homeowner today. Thank you, George. In St. Louis, Johnny Cotton had served 16 years of a 30-year sentence for possession of drugs and a firearm when President Obama granted him clemency. But you know, the world had changed during his incarceration, and he would need help to make his way. Through the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis's Save Our Sons program, Johnny secured a stable job with the Missouri Department of Transportation, regained the custody of his son, secured a scholarship for his education, and purchased a home. And he's also engaged to be married next month to Jennifer. Johnny and Jennifer are here. If they would stand. Johnny and Jennifer are here. Where are Johnny and Jennifer? Johnny and Jennifer, please stand. Please stand. And would Michael McMillan and Tydrell Stevens of the St. Louis Urban League please stand? Our CEO and the leader of the Save Our Sons program, if they would please stand. Johnny and Jennifer, congratulations. We love you. Congratulations. Let's give it up for them one more time. That supermarket in Buffalo, that racially motivated mass shooting was devastating and a shock to all of us. And a trauma for a community like so many struggling with poverty and segregation. The Buffalo Urban League established Project Hope to help Western New York cope, Western New Yorkers, I should say, cope with the trauma of the COVID pandemic. The team of crisis counselors, led by program coordinator Melissa Spikes Archer, quickly adapted to the shooting. Not only did the team set up a crisis center in East Buffalo to offer trauma counseling in 7 languages, Melissa's team hit the streets. They went door to door, seeking out people at vigils and gatherings and helping to deliver food to a community that had lost its only supermarket. Since the shooting, Melissa's team has given more than 1,000 Buffalo residents hope for the future. Please help me. Help me in offering thanks and appreciation to Melissa Spikes Archer, who is here, and Buffalo Urban League President and CEO Thomas Buford. If you all would stand at this time for the work you do, we appreciate. Yes. And let me also thank for his presence and support here today, Byron Brown, the mayor of the city of Buffalo. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your support, for your leadership and the work you do. There may be no greater injustice than that of a wrongful conviction, one based on fabricated evidence and police. Chester Holman III spent 28 years in prison for a murder he did not commit. It's hard to imagine overcoming the anger and resentment of such an injustice. Not to mention the daunting challenges of adjusting to a drastically changed society. But in stepped the Urban League of Philadelphia's Out for Good reentry program that helped Chester believe in the goodness of people again. Let us congratulate Chester, who is here with us, and Philadelphia Urban League President and CEO Andrea Custis for their courage and their conviction. Where are they? Please stand. Please stand. So let me say this. You hear sometimes from people, now what is it that the Urban League does? Tell them to call Chester. Tell them to call Jennifer. Tell them to call Aaliyah. These are just 4 examples of the more than 5 million people served by the Urban League since we last met in Indianapolis. And I want to thank every sponsor, every donor, every partner, every volunteer, every staffer, everybody, each and every one of you who have enabled us to empower more communities and change more lives than at any time in the 112-year history of this glorious movement. We thank you. It takes more than a village. It takes a collection of villages. It takes a big, messy, extended family. It takes all of us pushing to empower communities and change lives, but our work is just beginning. Our work is just beginning. And the future is going to be daunting and dangerous. We're not going to be able to traverse up the smooth side of the mountain. We're going to be traversing over the next few years up the rocky side of the mountain. It'll be daunting and dangerous. It will be treacherous and tricky. It will be hampered by the deceit and deception of the enemies of American democracy. Historically, women and people of color were not entitled to the promises of the great American experiment. The truth that our founders declared to be self-evident was a lie. It really should have said that only white men with property were created equal. Many of our enduring institutions were built on the foundation of that lie, covered by smog and fog, so we couldn't clearly see it. 2.5 centuries later, we remain haunted by this lie. But we are not going to be hampered by this lie in architecting, advocating for, and designing a better American future. An American future that says, yes, let's make this nation great, but let's make it great for everyone. Not for some, not for a few, not for the favored. And to paraphrase a 20th century leader, we bear a special responsibility to create conditions under which all can live with a maximum of dignity and a reasonable degree of freedom, where everyone who chooses may hold beliefs different than yours, sometimes even contradictory to ours, but where the laws protect people's right to peacefully participate in American democracy, the right to thrive in an inclusive economy, the right to control their own bodies, the right to be free from deadly violence on their streets, in their schools, and in their homes. Let me list these rights again. The right to participate. Unfettered, undiluted, unsuppressed. in American democracy. The right to thrive in an inclusive economy without a racial or income wealth gap, where everyone's talent and ability raises them through opportunity and through support to maximum happiness and achievement. The right of every individual, particularly every woman, to control her own body, not to be dictated to by the state or government or laws passed by men who have no idea what it is to carry a child. And the right to be free from deadly violence in the streets, in our schools and our homes. And we will fight, and we will work without hesitation or reservation as an Urban League movement to claim and reserve these rights for ourselves and all of our brothers and sisters. Earlier this year, we laid bare this conspiracy to destroy our right to participate in democracy through suppression, gerrymandering, misinformation, and intimidation. They represented this insidious and coordinated campaign to obliterate the very principle of one person, one vote. What happened on January 6th was a fascist coup attempt that began with an astonishing effort to halt the legal counting of votes through violence and overturn the results of an election. And it didn't end on January 6th. It continues to this day. To those who say, let's just forgive and forget, hell no. Because those that try to disrupt through the use of violence the orderly transition of power and the institutions of American democracy, which generations of Americans have worked to protect, to preserve, to expand, must be held accountable. Must be held accountable if this is a system of laws and not a system of men and women and just people and what they want. Right now, there's 70 election deniers who are candidates for state office, for those offices that run, oversee, or protect elections. States are changing their laws to permit partisan actors to interfere with election operations, overturn election results, intimidate elections officials. The Supreme Court has agreed to hear a case that would open the door for a state legislature to refuse to certify the results of a presidential election and instead select its own slate of electors. This is not North Korea. This is not Nazi Germany. This is not apartheid South Africa. I raise this because these thoughts are in my heart and in my soul. As a boy born in segregation, whose grandmothers and grandfathers and fathers and mothers were denied the right to vote, who, like many of your parents and many of your grandparents, placed themselves on the front lines to build a better nation, to build a better America, to expand democracy and to expand opportunity. And we cannot simply be silent observers or cynical, if you will, frustrated people who don't stand up to what has occurred. This has nothing to do with partisanship. This has to do with values. It has to do with American democracy. It has to do with who we are as people and what kind of nation we want to live in. The protests ignited by the murder of George Floyd, they shed a spotlight on how difficult it is to thrive in an inclusive economy. Many American institutions and corporations renewed, enhanced their commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Many of you in this room have been steadfast steadfast advocates for these commitments. To those who made these commitments, we applaud you. We applaud you. We strongly encourage you to maintain them and renew them. We do not want to look back 10 years and find that the moment of George Floyd was an episode, a moment, a blip on a screen, a press release, a pronouncement, an announcement, and then we moved on. But the little progress we've made towards an inclusive economy only serves to emphasize how far we've yet to come. Can I really celebrate a record number of black CEOs of Fortune 500 companies when the number is 6, representing just 1%? We can applaud, but we can't be satisfied. As I said before, the right of women to control their own bodies suffered a devastating blow with the overturning of Roe. That decision in Dodd is an affront to the dignity and freedom of every woman and every man who cares, and represents the ability of the state to intrude into an area and into a personal decision that should be left to women and their doctors, their spiritual advisors, or whomever they wish to consult. Black women are more than 2.5 times more likely to die as a result of childbirth than white women, more likely to require pregnancy termination care, and less likely to be able to afford out-of-state travel to obtain care. That decision, which gives states freedom to endanger the lives of their citizens, stands in stark contrast with the decision just one day earlier, which prevents states from protecting the lives of their citizens with common sense and gun safety measures. This Supreme Court, out of one side of its mouth when it comes to reproductive rights, states' rights prevail. Out of the other side of their mouth when it comes to gun safety, states' rights are tossed aside in fealty to the NRA. More Americans died of gun injuries in 2020 than in any other year on record. Guns were the leading causes of death, killing more young people than COVID, car crashes, or cancer. At this moment, a child in a classroom is more likely to die by gunfire than a police officer on duty. It should not be easier to get a gun than it is to get a computer or a lollipop or a Big Mac. We will fight to preserve and protect these rights. We will not accept failure when it comes to the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We send a message to politicians who do not support these bills unequivocally and completely. You do not deserve our vote. We will be tireless this fall in the relaunch of our civic engagement initiative, Reclaim Your Vote. Through peaceful demonstrations, aggressive litigation, full court press lobbying and advocacy, assertive public education, we will remind our communities that frustration is not a strategy, cynicism is not a tactic. Staying home on election day guarantees that we will not be at the table, but on the menu. Our right to thrive in an inclusive economy is sacred, and we will fight to preserve and protect that right. Once again, for companies who've made commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion, we will hold them accountable. We will applaud their progress, but we want them to keep their commitments. And for those who've not, we're going to say, don't hide behind your silence. Our right to control our bodies is sacred. Abortion bans are not just a gender justice issue, but due to wealth and income disparities and other insidious effects of structural racism, it's a racial justice issue. We'll push Congress to codify the right to an abortion in federal law and ensure that all pregnant persons have the ability to make personal health decisions. Our right to be free from deadly violence on our streets, in our schools, and in our homes is sacred, and we will protect that right, and we will not rest until assault rifles are banned, until the threat of white supremacist violence, self-harm, and domestic abuse are taken seriously, and universal background checks are a reality. This is a fight. This is hard work. But what is this work for? It's for a multicultural, multiracial, racially just America, where the wealth gap is a thing of the past, academic opportunity is open and available and affordable to everyone, where law enforcement can work hand in hand with the communities that they serve. The Urban League movement was born. It was born in the 20th century out of the crisis of the Great Migration. This Urban League movement has evolved to meet the challenges of the 21st century. This is not your grandmother or your grandfather's Urban League, but we stand on their shoulders. And we stand on their shoulders because we're building a movement and an America and a nation for our grandsons and granddaughters. I ask you today, here in Washington, D.C., will you fight with us to protect American democracy? Will you fight with us to hold businesses and corporations accountable? Will you fight with us to protect the right to control your own body? Will you fight with us to end the plague of gun violence that is tearing our communities apart? Will you fight with us to build bridges, not walls and barriers between communities and people? Will you fight with us? Will you fight with us? And urban leaguers, will you fight with us until hell freezes over? And then, will you fight on the ice? My name is Mark Morial. I'm the president and CEO of the National Urban League, and I approve this message. Thank you.
Thank you for attending the opening plenary. We'll see you all at the forums.